hold on one second. Hey Brian, what's the meeting ID you use to log in, Brian? To Zoom.
So originally I was under the one you emailed me to, and this one is
Hey Brian, let me.
FOLTOO. Yeah, can you hear me? Frank.
Hey Brian, can you hear me?
Frank,
Yeah. Can. Hey, what
can you
what's?
hear me?
I can hear you. What's that meeting ID that you use to log in?
So I don't know if there's zeros or O's, but it's FOLTOOGTN. The one you emailed it to me.
Yeah, hold on, Rob, one second.
Which looks like it's different than the one you sent me over the Facebook Messenger. It
Okay.
might not be. I don't know.
Hey, give me that code one more time. I'm just gonna text this to someone really quick.
You can't type it in. You got to forward it out of your email because I don't know because it's like a capital O and then a zero. You know what I mean? You won't be able to figure out which one it is.
Gotcha. Okay.
Actually, no. I'm sorry. Here we go. You can try this one. It's 296-700-8039.
You, so are you in, Rod? Oh, Rod, right there. Boom. There you go. All right, cool. We all in. So no, that's awesome, man. Well, look, I appreciate you guys joining me today. Actually, we'll give it a couple minutes before we start because we just getting folks to join, and it's on Facebook Live right now as well. So I appreciate it. Let me uh let me just fix this screen really quick. I'll bring you guys back in. How's it out there in California today, Rod? Oh, that's cool, man. Cool. Look, man, we'll go ahead and
Hey, Frank.
what's up, Brian?
I think you have to unmute Rod in Zoom
Can you
because I can hear him coming through your computer, but it's not in the meeting. And everybody comes into the meeting automatically on mute most of the time. Either that or Rod, if you can hear me, check your settings to see if you're on mute in the Zoom meeting.
Check and see if what?
Yeah,
Yeah, I can hear you now, but it didn't come through before. Just make sure you're not muted in the Zoom meeting. That's all. Looks like we're good though.
No, I'm not muted.
yeah. No, he's not muted. I think he's good to go. All right, guys. Look, appreciate you guys. Joining me for this important conversation today, and again, Facebook world definitely appreciate you guys joining us as well. I'll let Rod and Brian kind of introduce themselves. But again, my name is Frank Simpson. I'm a financial advisor with the Simpson firm. Um, Thank you guys for joining us today for a discussion about preparing for property ownership. And I assume that you all are here to because you're interested in even purchasing a home or you're interested in purchasing investment real estate. So, with that being said, I'll turn it over to the guys that know more than me about that. So, I'll start with Rod. I'll let Rod introduce himself and then we'll go with Brian.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Frank. Yes, Appreciate the invite. My name is Rod Watson. I am a real estate agent here in Los Angeles, California, and also service the San Diego, California market. Been in the business now going on 13 years, and I'm an independent firm. We specialize in luxury real estate sales. We have a direct target audience, a niche market, I should say, of sports and entertainment. And it's a career that I definitely enjoy and love being able to service clients now.
Brian.
Hey, Frank. Thank you. My name is Brian Mayer. I'm a real estate agent in Southern Maryland with eXp Realty. I've been in the real estate business for about 5 years. Prior to that, I was in the mortgage business for about 5 years. We help buyers and sellers in the Southern Maryland area, anything from first-time home buyers to $1 million listings and everything in between. We do have some experience with helping investors buying investment properties, and we've helped people, flip houses and whatnot. But our primary business is mainly listings, but also helping buyers buy houses.
Hey, I appreciate that, Brian, and hopefully by the end of this workshop, all those out there would have enough information to either contact Rod or Brian and be able to make a decision and access, potential properties that works for them. All right.
Correct.
So Rod, won't I start with you, man? Won't you give us a high level bird's eye view of investing in real estate?
So from like a first time buyer's perspective or just from my experience?
Both.
Well, from my experience, I started out just kind of like self-taught, reading books, gathering information. I think that regardless of, whether you're buying a property as a first-time buyer or you're looking to invest in a piece of real estate for long-term growth, or you're looking to do flips short-term, to create, income, at the end of the day, purchasing property is an investment, whether you're a first-time buyer or you're an investor. I think it's how you look at it and your perspective going in is what's important. For me, when I first bought our first property, I was new in real estate. I was just married, had our first daughter, and to me, I wanted to own a piece of property. So I did my due diligence. I did a lot of reading. I learned the ins and outs of the mortgage side of the business, so I was familiar with the vernacular. I didn't attend any classes. A lot of it was just self-taught, reading books. We're in a day and age now where you can sit and listen to podcasts. You can read books. You can go and sit in, home buying seminar classes that are offered by local agents in your area. So there's so much information at our, disposal, if you will, more so than when I first bought my home almost 16, 17 years ago. Information was still somewhat limited. So, I read up on, the process of buying a home, understanding the process, the mortgage side of the business, understanding the real estate agent side of the business, so I knew what questions to ask. And so for me, when it came time to buy my first property, or my wife and I was to buy our first property, I was very familiar with the process. I didn't feel intimidated. I wasn't afraid to ask questions. And I also, understood the importance of, when you purchase a piece of property, you make your money when you buy, not when you sell. So it's important that if you are looking at it from a long-term perspective, even short-term, because one of my mentors taught me no matter what type of property you buy, you always want to have an exit strategy. So for me, we looked at buying properties in the good areas, where there are good schools, major freeways, medical hospital, medical facilities, or where development is coming and bringing in, development opportunities, shopping, mixed-use retail. So I kind of followed that model when I first was looking for our property. So it moved us to buy in an area where there were good schools, there were local hospitals, and there were accessible freeways to our property within 5 to 10 minutes. Location is one of the most important things when purchasing a property, aside from the property's condition and obviously the amenities that the property has to offer. So I really think that regardless of what kind of property you're buying, first-time home buyer or investor, it's important to do your due diligence, do your research, understand what you're getting into, and understand the right questions to ask, so So that way you're fully protected. And last, hire a professional. Hire someone that can properly guide you, and take that advice and use it to your benefit.
Brian, you want to expand on that?
Maybe not so much expand, but I would like to emphasize what Rod said. In that, Rod mentioned a couple of times he didn't take any like online classes or any of these seminars. And I've worked with quite a few first-time investors who did not do enough. I don't know how to say this properly, but I know Rod just reiterated over and over again. Learn the business and become highly educated before you decide to take your 401k or your IRA and invest in real estate if you're going to use this as an investment, because you got to know your numbers. You got to know going in what the exit strategy is. You make all your money when you buy the house, not when you sell the house. So, when you're out looking, you have to be able to know. And the other thing is that when you're only looking at houses on the MLS, you're getting houses that are going to have less of a profit margin involved in them. The best place to find investment properties are before they hit the MLS. But again, at the end of the day, it's all about knowing your numbers, knowing how much the ARV, the after repair value is, knowing how much any repairs and upgrades are going to cost, how much the rental cost is, and you have to be willing to walk away and not get emotionally invested in this process. And you got to see it as an investment. And just to kind of reiterate over and over again, before you make any decisions or before you jump into anything, become a student. And like Rod said, listen to podcasts, read books, go on the internet. And again, just like he said, there's more than enough resources out there. But people, a lot of times I've just felt like people haven't been willing to take the time to properly understand, because they get excited and they just want to go out there and do it. And that's fine. But it can end up costing you a lot. I know a lot of people that own rental properties that started out as flips. Their intention was to become a house flipper. Right now they own one rental that they can't sell. And that's bottom line.
Hey, Rob, why don't you talk about some of the advantages and disadvantages of being a property owner, whether that's investment or just being a first-time homeowner?
Yeah, well, obviously, we'll start with some of the disadvantages. I think that some of the disadvantages can be if you don't live in the area, it can be very challenging to maintain and keep a property up if you're an out-of-state homeowner. So I always encourage people to buy typically close to where they live or in states that they're familiar with. If you've never bought a piece of property, I would say it would be to your disadvantage to buy a property in another state that you know nothing about. The other thing is that, some of the disadvantages are you have fixed costs that a lot of people don't prepare for, when owning a rental property. You're going to have things that break or that the tenants break that need to be fixed. ACs can go out. These things can cost a couple of grand or more right out of the gate, and oftentimes people don't have those reserves put away. So they wind up finding themselves being in a hole or in a bad position the minute something goes out or goes bad. So it's important when you're investing in a property to have reserves set aside in the event something does come up, because I promise you, shit always comes up. No matter what, things happen when you're owning a property. That's just the way the game goes. So I think that, having an understanding of what you're investing in, doing a true assessment of the property, making sure you're getting a full inspection. And even then, after having an inspection, you can own a property within a few weeks after closing if something goes out or something goes wrong. So those are some of the disadvantages. Some of the other disadvantages are, not fully understanding the market, maybe perhaps when you buy. The whole thing is when you buy a property, in my opinion, you should be able to cash flow or break even. Oftentimes, as Brian said, people make decisions on emotions, and they're not fully educated on the process, or they're being advised improperly, and they get into a situation that truly isn't to their benefit. So they're in the negatives oftentimes because they're not covering the note on the property. So those are some of the disadvantages. I'll let Brian touch on a few others, but the advantages, obviously, owning a property, you get to build long-term wealth. You can, if you buy the property right, as Brian said in the beginning, you should be going in at least with some form of equity, whether that's 5,000, 10, 20, 30, 50, whatever the case may be. Be in a position of power. understanding your numbers, making sure you do your due diligence going forward. But if you do all those things and you buy the property right and you're cash flowing, what happens is over time you're paying down the principal on that property, and slowly paying towards interest, which, typically in the beginning you're going to pay towards interest more than principal, depending on how your loan is structured for most people, especially with FHA loans. But more conventional loans where you're putting down 20% more, you're really putting yourself in a good position to start building equity and obviously building long-term wealth. Well, what happens is down the road, you can leverage that one property if there's enough equity in it to go buy more properties, or to pull a line of credit to do improvements to the property if that's necessary and needed, to then turn around and refinance the property again to go buy more property. So there are some advantages to owning, and I'll let Brian touch on a few others.
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback on what Rod was just saying, one of the strategies is to, and this is where the advanced, this is a piece of advice that, I didn't mention, but understanding alternative financing options is important. So if you can secure yourself a line of credit that gives you the flexibility to be able to go into a house, buy it low, invest some money into it, and then refinance your equity back out of it without putting yourself in a bad way, then you can then take that same money and go out and buy another house, and you have no money involved. And Frank, I'm sure you have some disclaimer on here. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't play one on TV or Facebook or YouTube or anything like that. But knowing some alternative financing options, but it all goes back to knowing your numbers when you're going in and knowing what you can do, what you can't do, what your profit margins are going to be, how long it's going to take, and just being highly educated on what you're doing. And as far as like the disadvantages, it comes down to if you made a good financial decision. If you're truly doing this for financial reasons, you're not doing this because you can't sell your house and you have to rent it. If you're gonna buy a house as a rental, it's just all about knowing the numbers and making sure that everything works for you, and just becoming highly educated about it and being aware of the risk and making sure that you're talking to someone like Frank and that you're financially set up properly so that, like Rod said, if something does go wrong, you have contingencies in place. But again, if you're following a path and a plan of somebody else, then you'll have prepared for all of that. And that would be another piece of advice is don't just try to make this up on your own. Follow somebody else who's successful, who's already doing it, and let them guide you on what you should do and shouldn't do.
Yeah, look, you mentioned something about alternative finance, and I was going to get to a little bit later. But Rob, really quick, you talked about making sure you don't overextend yourself. And right now on the screen, they can see, pretty much a 70-20-10 spending plan. I don't know if you subscribe to that or not, but essentially it's 70% to living expenses, housing, food, clothing, etc. And a portion of that, you could talk about wherever that portion is, should be going towards housing. 20% to debt, that's credit card, car loans, whatever it may be, unsecured debt, etc. And then, of course, it's important, again, in my world, in my lane, to pay yourself first, right? So you got to put at least 10%, ideally 20% if you could, to building your own wealth, whether you want to buy additional real estate or invest, in a business or any other means. So just a couple seconds really quick, just talk to how do you advise your clients on whether it's their first property or an investment property, how to budget appropriately for that acquisition?
Yeah, well, oftentimes it's tough, because clients, no matter how you know them, whether they're close or they're individuals you meet through, a first-time relationship, oftentimes talking about people's finances is just one of those sensitive subjects, and it's tough for people to really want to open up and get into everything, as far as what their credit score is, how much money they have saved, et cetera. And as a salesperson, I've learned over my career, sales is just asking the right questions. So for me, what I try to do is make sure, one, my buyer's prepared and informed about the process of actually purchasing a property. And there's specific questions I'll ask. Have you spoken with your lender, or do you have someone that you bank with? Do you have a financial advisor? Or do you feel that you and your family are in a position right now to purchase a property? And if they, listen, I shut up and I listen to what they say. If they say, well, what do you mean? 9 times out of 10, that means they haven't spoken to someone and they don't know. If they say yes, your debt? Are you in a situation where you have more debt than you have cash flow coming in? All of those types of questions can help lead you to helping them come to the conclusion of whether it's the right time to buy or what they need to do to be in a position to buy. If they say no, then you know the answer to that. So for me, it's about asking the right questions. Standard, numbers typically, the rule of thumb is 28% of your income should go towards housing. Well, we know that a lot of people are well above that. Some people, like out here in California, 38% of their income is going towards housing, almost 40. And that's because the cost of living is higher and people are in more debt. You look at millennials, part of the housing market, I personally feel that's in a lag is because millennials can't fucking buy houses. They got all this debt. Their parents didn't have all this debt when it came time to buy homes. And so something's going to have to take place there where these people can get better informed about how debt can truly impact their financial futures. We've all been told that going to college and taking out these massive loans is in our best interest. And here we are 20-something years later, and we're learning, no, it's really not in your best interest at the end of the day. And there is benefits. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying college is a bad thing. What I'm saying is there has to be a better alternative than these kids taking on all this debt. So with that being said, it really comes down to the right questions, and from there, understanding how to properly guide. Listen, I'm an advisor. I don't tell my clients what to do. I advise them on what's in the best interest if they're going to make a decision to buy or sell a property. But from there, they have to consult with the right people that deals with their money, which means a financial advisor or a mortgage lender. And if they don't have someone in place, I can refer them to people that we trust. But it really comes down to asking the right questions.
Yeah, I agree with everything Rod said. I have like a philosophy in the way I do business. And that is I treat people like they're my family. So if I'm dealing with my brother, my uncle, my dad, or whatever, and I get the impression that this person is not fully educated on this, I will do everything in my power to talk them out of doing it without talking to someone like Frank first. I'm a big believer in surrounding yourself with professionals, a good team of people, and making educated decisions based on a lot of wise counsel. And, I have lenders I work with, and if I was working with somebody and like Rod said, you ask a lot of, great questions, and you start to if I got the impression that this person wasn't fully aware of what they were doing, or if I felt like they were going in the wrong direction, I would do everything in my power to say, hey, listen, you got to talk to my lender. You got to talk to Frank. I think you need to understand a couple things before you make a decision. At the end of the day, it's going to be their decision. But I really believe that, I don't want to say more often than not, but I want to say on a higher percentage than I would like to see. I see people trying to read something on the internet and then use their credit and their finances to go out and make an investment decision in real estate without truly understanding what they're doing. And again, if you listen to the beginning of his video, what Rod said, he's talking about reading tons of books and seminars and tapes and just really, really becoming highly educated before you go out and do something like this. And the place to start would be Frank's office, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Frank, you still there?
Yeah, I appreciate that endorsement, Brian.
I'm serious though. I mean, I'm not saying that because I'm dead serious. Like, you really shouldn't be doing this unless you're under the care of a financial advisor. I believe that.
So look, with that being said, like, what do you guys need? What does someone need to buy? Like right now, they're watching this. They're like, you know what? You guys sold me on the idea of it. I'm going to chat with Frank, and then I'm going to reach out to one of you. But I need to know what do I need? And there's 4 pillars that I kind of framed it: credit, down payment, verifiable cash flow, or some type of asset to leverage, whether that's an existing home or investments or something. And then, of course, you're going to need some closing costs and some fees to be paid to guys like you. So what does someone need right now? If they say, you know what, I'm going to go gather my stuff and I'm going to give one of you guys a call. What do they need? Or what should they be thinking about that they're going to need?
You want me to go first?
Go ahead, yeah.
Well, you shared pretty much the things that you shared are important. I mean, they need to understand what position they are as far as credit. They need to have, if they have any assets, they need to be able to, provide documentation of those assets, tax returns, bank statements, things of that nature that they need to begin compiling and getting in order so that they can determine what they qualify for. Or if they're paying cash, then they need to have verifiable proof of funds, because some people are in a position where they can buy property outright, out cash. So those are the things that they need to, be prepared to. And then the next step would be, they need to reach out to you, Frank, if they have that direct relationship, or whoever they're being advised by. They need to be able to be put in contact with a mortgage or financial professional that can properly qualify them based upon their income, their assets, and of course their previous income that they've earned over the last 24 or 36 months, which their tax returns are going to reflect. Those are typically the primary things that they're going to need when preparing to purchase a property.
Hey, Brian, before you respond, I also want you to think, do they need the down payment to come out of their own money? Whether that's a real estate property or their own property.
That's all a part of their assets, in determining, how much reserves do they have put away, how much money do they have in the bank. When they go and they sit and talk with a mortgage professional, those are the questions that they're going to ask when they're asked to fill out a 1003 application is, what assets do you have, meaning properties you own, cash that you have in the bank, or assets that can be converted into cash, stocks, things of that nature, 401ks, those things that they have access to liquidate. Those can be used as a form of a down payment on their properties. If they don't have the money, then they should be having a conversation with the lender to say, hey, listen, I've got the income, I've got the credit, but I don't have the ability to put down the down payment. There are programs out there depending on, what state they're in, what they qualify for, where there's down payment assistance. Those types of loans or programs or grants are available, especially for programs at FHA. So they would just need to be able to, make sure that they communicate that with their agent and to their lender that they are in a position from a financial standpoint to afford the payments, but they just don't have the money to put down.
So Frank, there's a lot of different ways to answer this. I just want to clarify. So I was under the impression that we're discussing investment properties only. And I think Rod was hitting on, if you're buying your own house to live in as a primary residence. And there's a huge distinction. Generally, just to keep it easy, you need to be 620 credit, and you don't really need that much money for most programs. In Maryland, there's a lot of different programs for either no money down or 3.5% down for buying your primary residence. If you're buying investment property, the lending guidelines are much stricter based on the premise. If you get in a financial situation, the first thing you're not going to pay is your rental house. It's not going to be your primary residence. So you generally need to be, 680, 700 plus credit. And as far as I know, all the loan programs would require a minimum of 20% down cash out of your pocket on investment property. And if we're talking about flipping houses, there's also something called hard money, where you can take out a very short-term loan that has high interest. It's designed for people that don't necessarily have a lot of credit, but they're in like a contractor, and they will give you money to purchase the house, but also to do the renovations and then to hold it for a while until it sells. So there's a couple different ways to answer that question, Frank, but I would say as a general rule, if you're buying investment property, you need 20% down at a minimum. And then if you're buying your primary residence, it's all the way from 0 to 20% down.
Cool. Hey guys, touch on finding the right property. So now they got their money in order. They already got the right advice. So how do they go find the right, and maybe I'll leave Brian on the real estate investment side, and Rod, if you want to touch on a little bit of both, how do they go about finding the right property?
Yeah, well, one, they want to hire a professional that can help them and advise them on finding the right property that fits their right needs. I think when you're talking about a primary residence, it's usually going to come down to, what are their needs? What are the things that are important to them? Meaning, most people don't want to live within 10 miles away from where they work. Obviously traffic is getting worse in most destination cities. It's harder to get from one side of town to the next without having to be in your car for more than an hour. So typically, location is going to be important in proximity to where they work and what's around the property. If they have kids, they're going to want to be in communities where there are good schools. So they're going to have someone that can properly map out homes that they can go see that fit their criteria. So if they need to be close to work within a 45 or 30-minute or 10-minute or less drive, also price points going to determine the type of homes that they're going to be seeking, meaning what do they qualify for or what do they have cash to pay for. And then other amenities, if they're buying in the upper tier, are they looking to be in a gated community? Are they looking to be in a community that's new construction or communities that are more established? So it all really comes back to their criteria. But once they have their criteria figured out and they've spoken with a professional, both a mortgage and an agent that can properly advise them, then their agent should be able to say, hey, here's some areas that I think could be of interest. And they may say, hey, before we go look at these homes, why don't you guys drive through the neighborhood? Check the community out. Drive by the property and see if there's anything in that area or proximity to the property that would lead you to say, no, I don't even want to consider this. Because early in my career, I remember there were times where buyers were excited. They pick out these properties, and of course, they're only seeing what you send them from the photos or wherever they're looking at them on the internet. But then you drive by the home, they go, oh, I didn't know this was over there. No, I don't want to be over here. I don't want to live over here. I don't like this certain thing about this on this street or whatever the case is. So it's good for an agent to advise them to drive by if there's something they're capable of doing. And if they're not, their agent can go scout certain communities for the client and say, hey, here's what I found. Here's some information I want to share with you before going out and touring these properties. So it really comes back to the advisor that they're working with that can properly guide them and help them get into the property that ideally fits their needs and their living situation.
Hey, Brian, when you chatting, it's on the screen right now. They can see, essentially set a price range in their mind, kind of what's comfortable, right? After speaking to a guy like me, and then of course, securing a guy like you or Rod, figuring out what the funding mechanism is going to be, whether that's hard money, whether that's traditional lending routes or alternative routes, however you want to look at it. And then some of the things that I was thinking about was like you got to set the criteria, right? So what are you looking for? If it's an investment property, are you looking for a 4-unit? Are you looking for just a single house? If it's you're looking for a house for yourself, do you need a basement? Just 4-bedroom, 3-bedroom, and then you kind of evaluate all those options, right? That guys like you bring, make an offer, get the appraisal done, inspection, and then hopefully close. So you want to talk to that a little bit?
Yes, I would say that, something I said earlier, and again, we're just strictly talking about investment property. I would say that it would make sense if I'll say it this way, Frank, if you called me up, you're like, hey man, I want to get into this. What do I do? I would tell you to not only read a bunch of books, but there's also a local, there's multiple local investing groups that get together on a monthly basis that share ideas. They talk about strategies. They also give out referrals. So, hey, I got a 4-unit coming up. That's a great way to do it. And then you probably want to learn some strategies for buying off-market properties, because where I'm at as a real estate agent, you're looking at stuff that's coming on the MLS. If you're looking for a single rental, I mean, sure, that's probably the way to do it, because you're not going to want to get involved in what it would really take, a miniature college education in order to become a good investor. And I would say then go on the MLS. But if you wanted to be somebody who is going to make this, a part-time job or a full-time job, or you want to get very serious about it, then you probably need to come up with some strategies for buying properties off market. And that's going to be doing direct marketing through either Facebook ads, or you see those signs up all over town. We buy houses cash. We buy ugly houses. Put it on the back of your car. All those types of strategies for investment properties. Again, I would just kind of go back to, you want to be really educated your own self on where to find those things. And when it comes to hiring a real estate agent, it's kind of hard as a consumer to find out how good somebody is or how good somebody is. I would really look for somebody who has some experience in what it is specifically that I'm looking for. Because one thing is, The real estate agents kind of go in a full range of very part-time, 1 or 2 deals a year, up to somebody who does, 50 or 100 deals a year. They do luxury properties, and they might not be willing to take time out of their day to drive you around town looking at $30,000 tear down houses. So you really need to find somebody who's going to fit what you need, yet still has the expertise to be able to make sure they're guiding you in the right direction. Because, just one thing I want to emphasize here is the decisions that are made during this process have huge implications, positive and negative. And I just can't advise enough caution to people to really make sure that you're careful about what you're doing, because, it can go up and down, and there's lifetime consequences, both positive and negative.
Hey, Brian, earlier you mentioned like alternative, lending opportunities. So right now on the screen, they can see like, again, traditionally you're talking about bank loans, right? 30, 15-year, interest only, 7-1 ARM. Then you go to like a private lender. Most people don't even know, like you can go to an individual, have them fund the deal for you, whether
right,
private or for your own, if you're trying to buy your first home, right? You can have someone do it.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, you really don't. That's a real risky way of doing it, but people don't
right.
know that exists, right?
Right.
So now you're talking about, you got owner financing, you got crowdfunding these days, investment clubs, as you alluded to.
Yeah. Right.
Leveraging other assets. Rob mentioned a little bit earlier. Can you just talk about, again, maybe some of the pluses and minuses of each of those different funding mechanisms?
So high net worth individuals have access to different capital than the average person like myself, who would go to a mortgage company and try to take out a loan. And again, these are more like something that you really want to study and know what you're getting yourself into. But if you have a lot of assets and you have established credit, you're able to go to a bank and borrow money at a very low interest rate, and you're able to then use that money to invest. Like I just have a friend of mine who recently, over the course of 2 years, purchased 250 rental properties in the Baltimore area, and he had invested $0 in that. He was able to go in and use a strategy where he was borrowing money, buying the houses, fixing them up, then cash out, refinancing them, buying, over and over and over. Now, and the normal, and again, I'm not a mortgage lender. I don't play one on TV. I don't give out financial advice. But in a normal, I think they're called covered loans, you're limited to like 7 or 10, and I'm not up on the latest lending rules. But when you're getting like a regular mortgage, right, that's covered under all these mortgage rules and laws, and you get from a mortgage company, you're limited to like 7 properties. You put 20% down or 25% down, and you can just keep putting 20% down and buying them. But once you get past a certain number, now you have to go to alternative stuff. It's non-covered loans. Now, covered basically means like you're covered under all the rules of all these financial institutions. Like when you go take out a mortgage, your stack of papers is that big because it's that hard for the bank to foreclose on somebody in the covered loan. But if you're going to a bank and you miss one payment, they can call your loan. You know what I mean? We're just talking about stuff that's out of the realm of what's normal. I think for most people, getting a mortgage from a mortgage company as an investment property is probably what's most likely to happen. Or if you're buying multi-unit properties or commercial properties, you have to go to a commercial lending institution. And my advice would just be to talk to multiple ones, because when you're talking about those kind of loan programs, a lot of those are called portfolio loans. And what that means is that it's basically you're going to make a case for why you're good for the money, and then there's going to be a board of people in some room that's going to make a decision. And they have some general guidelines, but they can make exceptions. Like we were talking earlier, Rod was talking about like the percentage of what you're allowed to have for your mortgage. Like you can't go under a lot of loan programs, you can't go over 35% of your gross adjusted income, can't be more than 35% for a mortgage. But if you make $2 million a year, you have plenty of money left over if that was your thing, where you could get up past 50%. and a portfolio loan would work. So there's just so many different directions you can take this conversation. And if you're going to flip houses, a lot of guys that are in construction that do that sort of thing, they get something called hard money loans, where they go to people that just do hard money lending. It's generally a 12-month loan. It's in the neighborhood of 12 to 15% interest. You have to come up with about 10% of your own money up front, and then you have to pay points in the beginning and points when the house sells. And if you don't settle on time, the interest goes through the roof and it gets incredible, and it's something you don't want to do. And that's why a lot of times when you see these flips, you'll see them buy the house and 30 days later it's on the market, and they will drop the price aggressively to sell it because they don't want to hold the property, because they will start losing money very quickly.
Hey, Rod, you got anything to add to that, buddy?
No, that's all accurate. I mean, that was there. Good job, Brian. Those are definitely great examples and point. You pinpointed specifically, how people can leverage create. We use the term creative financing if they're going outside of your traditional, quote unquote, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, standard type of, loan originator.
Yeah, you probably deal with some more people out there in Los Angeles than I deal here in Southern Maryland. Most of my people are,
Yeah, there's a lot of creative financing that goes on out here.
Hey,
right.
Rod, speak to that a little bit, because I know you didn't mention this, but you work with a lot of really wealthy clients, and sometimes things differ, right? So your average Joe is looking at a 30-year mortgage or 15-year mortgage, but for your Hey, Rob, but for your guys, you looking at mostly, different type of funding structure. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, well, a lot of players and different clients that I work with, that are high profile. Oftentimes, they don't want banks and other people to know what kind of money or assets that they have, and then they're in a position where they own other assets, or they have, they've had substantial earnings on other assets like stocks, other real estate that they've done well in, and they're able to leverage those properties, or they're able to leverage those assets by borrowing against them. That's one creative way that they can be able to leverage those assets and be able to get a loan, typically at a reasonable rate, to go and purchase more real estate or invest in a particular piece of property. We see it a lot out here, particularly when it comes to, I've got a group of guys, they focus on buying properties in certain areas, and they pulled their money together and leveraged their assets, and they've gotten, we use the term, creative financing from a private lender that was willing to lend them the amount of money that they were seeking. That had they gone to a traditional bank, the banks just aren't set up to provide those services in that manner in which our clients were seeking. So you have various ways that if you have other assets out there, which oftentimes these individuals do, they can leverage those assets and get around your traditional forms of lending to be able to get capital to go out and make the purchases that they're seeking, or investments that they're seeking to invest in.
Hey, guys, I can't hear Rod. I can't hear anything at all, actually. Frank, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Can you guys hear me now?
1 second.
I'm going to disconnect.
Oh, man, I think he...
Maybe it's cutting out.
Hey, Brian. No, I think I'm muted. That's why.
Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you, bud. Let's see if I can send you a message. 1 second.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, I can hear you, Rod. I think you might be muted, though, Rod. Let's see.
Sorry, that's my car.
No,
that's weird. How about now?
Hey, can you hear me now, Brian? Hey, Brian, can you hear me, buddy?
All right, sorry about that. I'm back.
I can hear you okay.
All right. Yeah, so look, at this point, I think we covered a lot. And look, I'm grateful for you two's time today. But kind of as a round out the webinar, what are some resources that you haven't talked about that you would love to throw at anyone that's watching this video?
Oh man, some resources. You know, I think for first-time home buyers, definitely do your research. There's a lot of people have gone the traditional way for years, but there's programs out there right now, FHA, that allows you to buy multifamily properties, just as you would a single-family residence as your primary residence. These particular properties can have commercial spaces attached to them, so that's additional income that you can earn while living there. There's also grants in place in certain states, like here in California, where you can receive a grant to purchase these properties, which is considered your down payment. And if you live in those properties for 3 or more years, you do not have to pay that particular down payment back. So I would really consider, your position. If you're young, you're single, or you say you got a girlfriend, a boyfriend, you guys live together, you have no kids, and you're willing to make the sacrifice as opposed to purchasing a traditional quote-unquote property in a residential community, I would consider working to build a passive income portfolio while you're young. And I think in the long run, you will both be very thankful. That's one of the things, looking back, if those options were available when I was buying a property with my wife, I probably would have went that route, even with our first child that we had at that time, and made the sacrifice to build a real estate portfolio of passive income.
All right, so I would say, again, it's like the conversation is a lot different if we're talking about buying a primary residence, and there's a lot of things I would have said that I didn't, because I think I was kind of thinking about the investment stuff. But if you were talking about buying a primary residence, one of my first pieces of advice would be to make sure that you are getting the listings directly from a realtor. In Maryland, we have access to off-market properties, coming soon properties, and different properties that are not even on websites like Zillow and Realtor.com. And we're in a very competitive market right now. In the last 3 home buyers, getting the listings directly from a realtor. In Maryland, we have access to off-market properties, coming soon properties, and Frank.
Hey, Brian, sorry about that. Are you there?
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. All right, man. So getting them directly from us, you get them within 15 minutes of them hitting the market. So we're in a super competitive market right now, especially around the DC area. It's like houses are getting multiple offers very quickly. But if you can get to the house in the first couple hours, or at least the first day, you greatly increase your chance of getting a decent house. And then, off Rod's point, I would say one of the biggest mistakes people make is they go with a company like USAA or Navy Federal, and they don't have access to all these programs like Rod was talking about. Because in the Maryland, we have the same thing: down payment assistance, closing cost assistance, lower interest rates for people that qualify for these programs, and even I would say probably 50% of mortgage lenders don't offer these programs as well. So you have to work with somebody who knows about those programs. And then same thing on the real estate side. Make sure you're working with the real estate agent who knows what they're doing. I would definitely just throwing us out here, stay away from anybody who's at your regular full-time job who does real estate on the side. And I'll just reiterate again, because I just had a deal blow up like 2 hours ago, and I'm just very cognizant of the implications that these decisions make. And I think make sure that you're working with the real estate agent you feel comfortable with, who also does a lot of business, who's in the market every day, is a full-time realtor, and has got a good reputation, and somebody you can rely and count on, because you're going to be making lifelong decisions based on that person's advice, and you need to trust that person, and that person needs to be competent, and that would be it. You're working with somebody who's all about it and who has a lot of knowledge. They're going to be able to set you up much better than somebody who doesn't.
Hey, I think Rod left the meeting. I was going to actually ask him, but I'll throw this at you, Brian. Inside of the Trump tax laws, there was a really good investment opportunity as it relates to, no pun intended, opportunity zones. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Actually, I don't know exactly what you're referring to. I know in the state of Maryland, And again, just to be clear, we're talking about a completely different situation when it comes to your first time. When it comes to a primary residence in the state of Maryland, there's actually opportunity zones. I don't know in effect. Can't get houses at a huge price reduction. There's programs that have much lower interest rates, and depending on where you live, depending on what you do for a living, depending on if you're a first time home buyer or not, depending on how much money you make, can give you access to a ton of different programs.
Gotcha. So look, the opportunity zones is simply it's a scenario in which an investor can take all of their capital gains, defer it for a certain amount of time if they hold the property. If they hold the property through duration, essentially capital gains is wiped away. And I have to check this, but I believe that there's no capital gains on the property that you acquired and held for 10 years as well. So really good opportunity to kind of erase a tax liability on something that you could have been holding for 40, 50 years, roll it into an opportunity zone as an investment real estate opportunity, and reap the benefits of that moving forward too. Pretty sweet deal we got from a real estate president. If you
right. Yeah, I was thinking more physical zones, but again, I'm not. Generally, my primary client is people selling their house. I help a lot of buyers, a lot of military people, and I help investors from time to time. But what I say this carefully, I try to talk a lot of people out of doing this when I've had conversations with them and I feel like they're just not invested in it like they need to be. Somebody who's on a call like this and somebody who sat down with you, Frank's probably taken more steps than a lot of people do. And I make it, a regular practice of mine to talk people out of doing dumb things, uneducated things. Let's call it that.
Hey, Brian, I appreciate that, man. Look, I was gonna go some time for Q&A, but we've been on for about an hour or 40 minutes. So won't you do this? Won't you leave your information? Where can someone reach out to you that if they have more questions or just kind of want to talk shop or explore some opportunities in Maryland?
Sure. If you want to sell your house, you want to find out how much it's worth or find out how we sell houses for more money, check out homesellingadvice.net. You can look me up on Facebook, Brian Mayer, Mayer. Go to my Facebook page, themayergroup.net. You can go to my website, themayergroup.net. You can call me, text me, 443-624-9398. But I would say, just check me out first. Go to those places. I got a ton of videos on selling and buying houses and what some of the biggest mistakes buyers and sellers make. And I make it a regular practice to put up videos on mistakes I see people making in the marketplace. Not a ton of stuff on investors, but primarily about selling houses and buying houses.
Any good opportunities, any success stories you want to share before I let you go?
So the biggest success story, Frank, really is a strategy for buying a house. And I'll just sort of lay out a framework for, I just did a video on this the other day. Like if you want to nail the home buying process, here's what I think you should do. The first thing you got to do is you got to get your financing straight, and you got to be working with a local lender so that if you're in a competing situation, the realtor on the other side is more likely to be comfortable with your mortgage lender. As a listing agent, if I get a Rocket Mortgage versus my lender, I'm going to go with my lender, all things being equal. The second thing you want to do is you want to work with a very aggressive realtor who is, in the business all day, every day, who knows what they're doing. And you want to be getting the listings within 15 minutes of them hitting the market. And then you want to be aggressive about going out and seeing them within a couple hours of them hitting the market. And the strategy is You call the listing agent and you say, listen, I have 2 houses I'm interested in, but I want to make an offer on yours first. The only question I have for you is if I give you a full price offer or an aggressive offer, will I get a response today? Because you want to know that before you write the offer. You don't want them to take your offer and wave it in front of everybody over a period of a weekend. And if you can get in there and you can do that, you can slam dunk it and, get yourself a great house. Anything that's been on the market for 2 weeks or more, there's either something wrong with it or it's overpriced. And about 10% of the houses sell the first 24 hours, and those are legitimately the best deals. But you got to be aggressive and you got to know what you're doing.
No, good stuff, Brian, man. Look, I appreciate you. Really quick, I just want to drop, a thank you to you guys and a thank you to everybody else that tuned in. Certainly a thank you to Rod. And Rod Watson can be reached at, lavipagent.com. On Facebook, he also has his Facebook page, the facebook.com/Rod Watson 23. And I'm sure if you reach out to him, he's a friend of mine. If you reach out to him on Facebook, he'll be more than willing to work with you if you're out in the California area or any other area that he's licensed in. And the two of you too should probably get together, Brian, because I know you guys often work together as far as like referring one another. If you're not licensed in a certain state and you come across an opportunity, you can work together.
Absolutely.
Yep. So look, I appreciate it, man. Thanks a bunch, Brian. And with that being said, we'll sign off.
Yes, sir, Frank. Thanks for having me on. Let's do it again soon.
Yeah, we definitely will. Oh, you know what? There's Rod right there. So Rod can go ahead and give his information if you want. We just gave you a shout out and said thank you, Rod. But anything you want to say as far as leaving your information or letting people know where to contact you?
For me, Rod?
Rod, you got it. Yep.
Yeah. Again, I'm Rod Watson. You can contact me at 323-596-7461. Or you can connect with me on Instagram at Rod Watson23. At any point in time, you can DM me or you can call me, and my email is rod@thewatsongroupagency.com.
Hey, last thing, Rod, you just missed it. I said you and Brian should connect as well, just in case there's opportunities in areas that you guys don't share a license. You guys still can work on it.
Absolutely. Can you share my information with Brian?
Yeah, I'll definitely look you up, Rod.
Brian, you can text me at my cell phone or share your information with Frank, and I'll reach out to you.
Absolutely.
Okay, pleasure being on with you.
Hey, gentlemen, I appreciate it, man. Have a good one.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, guys.
All right.